Welcome, Kushal. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Teresa.
Your book, On a Wing and a Prayer, chronicles your journey from being at ground zero at 9/11 and how it sort of prompted you into your spiritual path that you began somewhat skeptically. And I just wonder if you can talk about some of the big questions you had that sort of prompted that journey.
Certainly. So I guess, as you pointed out, 9/11 or having made out of 9/11 definitely was the trigger for me to ask a bigger question. It so happened that I used to work on Wall Street just before that, and I was so entrenched in the proverbial rat race of this fast-paced Manhattan life that I'd perhaps stopped asking what I was doing and why I was doing what I was doing. And when this happened, it shook me up and beckoned me to ask a bigger question. That there had to be something more to life than what met the eye. Perhaps that was the first time I questioned the status quo that I was so used to. But I struggled to find an answer. I was nowhere close to finding what to do next. A part of me was very grateful for having survived, and there was a renewed sense of enthusiasm for life, for the new lease on life. But then other part was saying, what's the point? What if something like this were to ever happen again, and you're not so lucky the next time? So what are you really doing? So there was this a tumultuous kind of push and pull, and I kind of stayed where I was, stayed on the spot. And so, yeah, that was the first time I kind of even asked what I was doing.
Yeah, one of the things that I know that you're aware of it because I heard you on another podcast or an interview, but the correlations between 9/11 and the pandemic and everything that's happened. And, I think for the first time for a lot of people that weren't even born during 9/11, this is the big seminal event where they've paused just to check in and say, okay, what are we really doing, right? Because the Great Resignation is like one of the sort of points of evidence of that. And I'm wondering for you, what was the difference? For me, these were the two seminal events of my life. And I'm wondering for you, what was the difference or what was the same in your experience of going through the 9/11 catastrophe and then getting hit with this global pandemic and shutdown and everything that's happened?
You're absolutely right, Teresa. These two events feel like bookends between, and my life seems to be like the bookend between these two events. Definitely very similar emotions, very similar feelings were evoked as the pandemic hit and we kind of were isolated and were locked down, and all those things. Some of those things came back up again. So in some sense, it was very similar. I mean, we all were facing something that we had never seen or imagined or expected. We all started questioning. I can't imagine a single soul out there who's probably not questioned their work, their life, their relationships, everything that they're going through, and perhaps second guessed it. What am I really doing? So in many ways, this created similar walls around me, just like that 9/11 event did. And it's somewhat unfortunate that one has to experience something like this to be asking such important questions, which we never ask. Fortunately or unfortunately, it was not 9/11 that people had to experience. But it's again, this event, this last 2 years, have been no lesser in intensity or impact in some sense.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot where people don't make changes in their life until it's going really badly, or you hit rock bottom. And it's kind of the same thing with these two events, but on such a bigger scale. And we don't really stop very often to ask ourselves if we're on the right path, or if we're, where are we hoping to really get in life, not just career-wise or questions like that. So I absolutely agree with that. One of the things that I was really curious about was what I see as the dichotomy between working on Wall Street and pursuing a spiritual path. And I'm sure it's not, but that's really my question is, how did you, because I know even once you left Wall Street, you stayed in finance for quite a while. And I'm just wondering how you straddled those two worlds.
It's very interesting. The initial approach to the whole aspect, or even the prospect of getting into meditation, felt very foreign to me, because I felt at that time, um, I had this preconceived notion that meditation could perhaps take an edge off, or meditation can make you so calm and so relaxed that you don't want to go after the pursuits or ambitions or dreams that you have in the world. And I thought, and that's why I kept postponing. And as you pointed out, the skepticism was born partly out of that, to think that, no, it's something maybe I should consider when I retire, when I'm done with everything and I have lots of time, that's when I do it. But now, having meditated for almost 15, 16 years, and having founded 3 startups, and kind of having worked as a trader, portfolio manager on Wall Street, all throughout in the backdrop, one thing is now very clear, that meditation kind of makes everything else a lot more juicier. It gives you that strength, the ability to retrieve back, to rest, to rejuvenate, so that you can go out in the world and even play harder. So to me, I feel it was a beautiful gift that just landed in my lap, that I stumbled upon, and a gift that keeps on giving. I always, as a Wall Street personality, type A trader, I would always think of things in form of return on investments. And, so this is something, probably the highest return on investment activity that I've ever encountered in my life.
I love that description or analogy. So speaking of that, because you did struggle with meditation at first, as you describe in the book, and I know a lot of our listeners struggle with it. And I was just wondering if you have any tips for people that maybe when they first sit down think, oh, this is a waste of time, or this isn't going to help me, or how did you kind of how did you stick with it to get to the point that you could feel the benefits of it?
Absolutely. Meditation is a waste of time, but it's a very skillful way of not doing anything. We always want to sometimes say, oh, I hope I can't do anything. I just want to be. I don't want to do anything, but we can't, because the mind just goes all around. So yes, meditation is very skillful. See, my struggle initially was, I had read a lot. I had a lot of concepts. I read about mindfulness, and I had practiced little things here and there. And where I struggled was to keep thoughts at bay, to be more mindful, to observe my thoughts, observe my state of mind, observe my breath, to not think of something or to focus on something else. All this was in the realm of mindfulness practice that I had been exposed to early on. And as I got deeper into the practice, I realized that all of that, whether to not think of something or to watch something or to be aware of something, be mindful of something, is very frontal cortex activity. At the level of your mind, there is an effort involved in doing all of these, or not doing something is also an effort. And one thing that mind does not respond to is effort. If I ask you to close your eyes, Teresa, and not think of a book in a pink cover, what's the first thing that's going to pop up?
Okay.
Right? Exactly. So it's established now by research that you cannot control your own mind with your mind. Mind does not respond to effort. So what you need is a technique that takes you beyond your mind, that helps you transcend your thoughts to a point where you're not focusing on them. If the thoughts come, you let them come. You're not saying, oh, I can only meditate when I don't have any thoughts. Such was my false understanding early on. But only thing that changed that was an experience, not more concepts, not more books, not more deeper understanding. What changed it was an experience. When the first time I stumbled upon this breathwork technique called Skype Breath meditation. And when I experienced that, that's when I realized that here now I could use my breath to transcend all those things that were mere impediments or obstacles for me to go deeper. whether it was focusing on an object or resisting thoughts. I did not have to do any of that anymore. And that was refreshingly simple and welcoming, because now I didn't have to struggle. I didn't have to, oh my goodness, this or that. No, all that was fair game. I just had to sit and do this sky breath meditation, the rhythmic breath work. And it just took me to a place which was meditation. I did not have to put an effort to meditate.
Excellent. Yeah, I actually, one of my questions to you was, because you talk about sky breathing in the book, was if you could explain what that is to our listeners.
Certainly. So, we have all these different functions in our body. Of course, at the physical level, we have these physical functions which allow us to interact in the world. We have functions of cognition, perceptions, memory, our own identity. And somewhere along the way, as the life happens, these functions go a little out of whack. The rhythm, the harmony in these functions get disturbed. And that creates stress, that creates anxiety, that creates all these unwelcome things that nobody wants. What happens with sky breath, using the rhythms which are already inbuilt in our own breath, it breeds coherence in our system, aligns all these functions, harmonizes your nervous system, and puts you in a state that is meditation. So it's a very innocent, very effortless way of going deeper within yourself and kind of experiencing who you really are. That inner core of our being, which really is that source of joy, source of energy, the source of being in the present moment. I had read all this time about keeping your mind in the moment, not thinking of future, not thinking of past, being in the moment. But how do you do that? There is no guidebook to really. If you tell your mind be in the moment, again, it's going to do everything other than that. So when I found this sky breath, at the first time I experienced a state of mind without turbulence, without thoughts. And then I realized, this is what they talk about being in present moment is. So just through the action of your own breath, just rhythmically breathing in a guided voice, you just experience that present moment.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good tip for people that are especially new to meditation, to try something. We do recommend, if you're struggling, to use some kind of guided meditation to get started. Or, I think even apps are good for maybe getting you in a habit. I don't think an app takes you, into deep meditation, but
Right.
Sky Breath, we use that in our workshops sometimes. And I think it's an excellent technique. And we're just for listeners, it's SKY if they want to look it up. But I do think that when you approach meditation with the perspective, or with maybe the attitude, or actually my next question to you is about intention, and you reach out for that help. So, go along with a guided meditation or do a group meditation. A lot of times that can get you past that initial hump, I guess is what I'm trying to say, instead of giving up, that there are all these different
Yes.
techniques we can use. Speaking of that, of intention, you have a chapter in the book on the power of intention. And I was wondering if you could describe why you think intention is so important in the process of monitoring or controlling our minds.
I think this is what I learned from my teacher, Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar, is that the whole universe, if you want to boil it down, is just three simple words: intention, attention, and manifestation. You, it starts with a subtle intention, because our energies are going all around, right? Everything is ton of things that are getting thrown at us. Our minds are distracted into multiple things, perhaps at the same time, not even in the same day, but at the same moment, there are multiple things that are prying for our attention. How do you channelize that energy that we have towards one thing? So it just starts with a subtle intention, not making a big concept of it, not making a real, I have got to do that. But it's just something very innocent, something from the core of your heart. Okay, I'm just going to, for next few minutes, or for next hour, next 30 minutes, this is what I want to attend to. Just putting it out there to the universe, giving universe that chance to just, respond back. And then with that intention being put out there, you put now your attention on it. You give your 100% to that activity, that whatever you've taken up, whether it's a project, whether it's a practice, whatever it is, you put your attention towards it. and then just wait for magic to happen. Wait for it to unfold and kind of work it out, work its way out.
Beautiful. Um, I think maybe one of the important questions I want to ask is about your view of the purpose of life. So I know that you went through a lot of internal transformations after the 9/11 tragedy. And I'm just wondering, and including now with the pandemic, but how has that affected really how you look at your purpose in life?
I think it's a lifelong exercise, finding the purpose of one's own life. Again, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, he says something very beautiful. He says, those who know their purpose of life will not tell, and those who tell, they do not know. So, it's like a path that you keep walking back and forth on. You have to, it's something that it's a beautiful question to stay with, that what am I really here for? What am I doing? Who am I? And just something, being with that question kind of unfolds more and more in your life as you go through it. Kind of, it's been a beautiful process for me just to stay with that question. What is it? What does it really mean? I still ask that question to myself. What am I really doing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I've talked about this before, but a lot of people think they have one purpose. And I don't think that's possible. I think it changes continuously because everything around us changes. And it's so funny, this week's podcast is about us being a work in progress. Like we're never going to get there, whatever you're thinking there is. It is the journey because it changes constantly.
Because there is nowhere to get. There is
Right.
no one to become. You're right. It is the journey. And perhaps one of the purposes could be to enjoy the journey, be in the moment.
Exactly.
And I guess if you really achieve that, then all the purpose falls away, right? Because you're in the moment. You're not even thinking of where you want to be.
True. Oh, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Let's see here. I wanted to also ask you about the three modes of one's consciousness that you describe in the book, and how having desires is not really a problem. And the reason I'm asking that is it ties into what I asked you about being on Wall Street and following a spiritual path, is a lot of people misunderstand somehow that being spiritual or being mindful or meditating somehow means you have to sacrifice or give up worldly desires or all materialism or along that vein. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Absolutely, and guilty as charged. I used to think that, as I said earlier. I mean, I thought that was one of the negative side effects of meditation, but it's so not. I mean, so these three modes that I've talked about in my book, which I learned from my teacher, he spoke about the desire, the action, and the knowledge or wisdom. So these three are such an intertwined modalities or modes of our life that it's like you're wearing a glass, you're wearing a spectacles, and after a point you're not even aware of the lens between you and the world. So these three things are so close to us that perhaps somewhere one transitions into other, and we kind of lose our attention on these three. But a judicious mix of all these three, having a life fulfilling or life supporting desire, an action, a harmonious, a right action towards it, with the wisdom that everything is changing, everything around us is so impermanent. That is so key to everything we do. That is so key to getting everything done without feeling unstuck. Because otherwise when these three things go out of balance, strong desire without the wisdom, you get stuck into that activity when that activity doesn't yield results in the due time that we expect it to. Or just the wisdom without the desire or the supporting action can make you feel so inert, or just like, okay, so what's the point of all this? So having the beautiful balance of the right desire, the right action that supports that, and the wisdom that kind of keeps everything in check, gives you that strength to move through it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And now I know you now are not trading anymore. You and your wife have a chocolate shop. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that sort of transition because it's not just a chocolate shop. You operate it in a very mindful way.
Mhm.
So could you maybe describe like how you run this business now compared to, what we think of as a typical business?
So my wife, who also was a Wall Street trader, we decided we really wanted to do something that has a lot of purpose, that has some impact in the way, in our sense of things. So we created Elements Truffles, which is our an artisanal chocolate company founded on the principles of Ayurveda and giving back. So we decided not to chase bottom line, unlike our previous ventures where we were just singularly focused on that. So here we work directly with the farmers in Ecuador as we import their cacao. You know, there's a strong degree of fair trade involved as we source our ingredients. Um, there's a very mindful way of making these chocolates. The team meditates before making the chocolates, and we play sound baths as the chocolates are being made. And once the chocolates are sold, the 25% of the profits go towards educating underprivileged children in tribal areas of India with our partnership with Care for Children. So there's a lot of heart in the entire chain from beginning to the end. And something we found really romantic to start with, but when the rubber hit the road, we found it really challenging because when you talk to an investor, they're like, what do you mean 25% of the profits are given away? No, we want. So there were so many decisions we had to make or not make just because of certain ethos that we started with. But we are so proud and so happy that we've stuck with it. We've stayed the course. And it's something we really enjoy. Chocolates and meditation is something that really make us happy. And here we are doing it as our full-time activities. So
Well, I thank you for creating a model that maybe other organizations can follow, because I think that would make the whole world a better place. So thank you for sharing that. I guess as we close, I would just like to ask you how listeners can learn more about you and the book.
on my website, kushalchoksi.com, my first name and last name. The book is on Amazon, perhaps in a store near to you. And I'm fairly active as a newbie author on social media, more active than ever before. So hit me up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I would love to hear from you. Would love to connect with you and kind of walk on this path together.
Great. Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. And I thank you for writing the book. It is a very interesting insight for an outsider to read, like what someone went through that started off with that horrific day and has really turned it into a learning opportunity and really prosperity and abundance after that. So I think it's an inspirational story, and I thank you for sharing that too.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me share that with the world.
Thank you.